As you know, I'm always looking for new ghost stories, and you can tell your ghost story to me in person if you book at the Phantom History House Bed and Breakfast. Go to phantomhistoryhouse.com, check out our 4 themed rooms, and book, and we will talk very soon. Hello, everybody. Steve here at the Phantom History House, and I am really excited to welcome Kristy to the podcast this time around. I love doing research online, and I think I was on Facebook when I stumbled across the Scott County Jail, and reached out. And surprisingly, you were like, "Hey, I'm ready to talk. Let's share this story." So, thank you, Kristy, so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Steve. Thank you for having me today.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about, well, one, where you are in Tennessee, and a little bit about this jail. Do you own it? Do you work there? What's your connection there?
Okay, so we are in Huntsville, Tennessee, which is in Scott County, which is in East Tennessee, kind of northeast Tennessee, if you will, not far from the Kentucky line. And so, kind of how this started was an interesting partnership between my business partner Miranda Young and myself. So, both she and I are paranormal investigators, and we met about 6 years ago. She was following my show, which is Soul Sisters Paranormal, and I was following her show, which is Ghost Biker Explorations. And so we formed a really fast friendship. We collaborated on a couple of investigations throughout the country, and really just kind of enjoyed each other's style, really with the respect of history and sharing a historical narrative of locations, as well as paranormal investigations. And so after, again, collaborating and really forming that fast friendship, she is from Scott County originally. And through a series of events, she needed to move back to Scott County, to this area, to be closer to her family. And she knew that this jail was really sitting vacant, and the town wasn't doing anything with it. And she also knew that it had a haunted reputation. So she called me up and said, "Would you like to partner on this business plan to build a what we call a true crime museum, as well as a paranormal research location?" So we spent about 3 months putting a business plan together, and her background is actually in marketing and graphic design and advertising and all of that fun stuff. So she did a great job with really putting together some marketing plans, and then I did the business plans with regard to crunching numbers and stuff. And so we approached the town of Huntsville and the board and the alderman and the mayor who actually own the building. And we said, will you allow us to rent the jail and really put our plan into motion? And they agreed to that. And in September of 2021, we actually opened, and it's been a great success ever since.
That's amazing, and I love that story. I've read a little bit about your background, of course, and some clips of the podcast, things like that, to try to get a feel for you. And I love that you are so focused on the history side, because that's where my love is. Is I love the paranormal stuff. I love all the hauntings, and it fascinates me. But when it connects to the historical side of something, it just kind of makes it so much more real and so much more tangible. So
Mhm.
I love that you do that. Now, are you originally from that area, and how familiar were you with this building?
I'm not. I am from Florida originally, and I was still living in Florida when Miranda and I met. She is, like I said, from Tennessee,
Mhm.
and so really, I my familiarity with the building came through her, and just her telling me how it closed in 2008 and how it really was a fixture in the community, but that it said vacant from 2008 really up until the time that we got it and opened it as a museum. So she was the one that really filled me in on the background of the location. And then as we did research from when really wanted to put our plan into motion, we did a lot of historical research on the building. We talked to experts, we talked to former inmates, we talked to former jailers, former deputies, former dispatch officers that used to work in here as well, and really just gain that historical perspective from those individuals who actually worked here and in some cases were incarcerated here. And so, like I said, Miranda's familial background, just being here in the county, was a big help. The mayor was one of the students that her parents taught. So to be able to have that connection and have her family name really known here was a big bonus to helping us get the business up and running.
Yeah, and I like how you said here in this building because I see behind you there's a height chart. So are you like in what was used to be the booking area of the
I,
of the
I
jail?
am. I am. So I am currently sitting inside the historic Scott County Jail, and this would have been the booking room. And what's fascinating is when the jail closed in 2008, they literally just shut the doors and left. And it really sat vacant up until 2017 when Scott County gave the jail to the town of Huntsville. Huntsville then got a tourism grant to do some repainting and add some new windows and a heating and cooling system. And then it sat vacant again until 2017, until 2021, when we opened the museum. So the wanted and missing posters behind me, those were original when the jail closed. So when the doors locked, those posters were hanging there. This little board right here behind me, this would have been the inmate intake board. So inmates' names were written on that board and then assigned to cells. The height chart that you mentioned, that was original. So it's kind of interesting to have those things that were here when the building doors were locked still hanging on the walls.
Yeah, it's kind of like a time capsule. It just kind of shut the doors and here everything is, which is amazing to be in that environment.
Mhm.
If I remember my research right, there's three floors to this building. Is that right? What floor are you
Correct.
on? Are you on the first floor?
I'm on the first floor, correct. So originally, the jail was built as a two-story jail. It was built in 1904. It was built as a two-story building. In 1922, there was a fire that caught the roof on fire. And instead of just repairing that, they decided to add the third level in 1922. So the third level became our maximum security level. So it looks typically like a jail that you would envision, the bars and all of that. And then the second floor, which was originally the first floor, or the second floor, became what we call the trustee cells. So those are larger dorm style looking cells, if you will. And because those were the trustee inmates would stay. And then this first floor, there's a couple of cells down here, the drunk tanks, the solitary confinement cells, but mainly this was for administration. So the booking, the sheriff's office, interrogation rooms, those would all be here on the first floor.
So what kind of inmates are we talking about? I mean, if there's solitary and there's maximum security, I mean, were these some violent criminals or were they less or so since this was a county situation?
In some instances, they could have been. But to your point, we are a county jail. So most of the inmates here were in here from anywhere from 1 month to 23 months. Really, anything after that, you're going to be sentenced to a prison or a state facility to serve your incarceration time there. So we had mostly drunken disorderlies, some domestic violence, drug offenses, and stuff like that. However, we were a holdover for Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in some instances. And also, if you were in here for murder, and you didn't have your court date yet, we were a holding facility for that. So you could be here waiting for your court date and still be a violent offender, and that's where they would have put you up in the maximum security level up on the third floor. But for the most part, we had county crimes, like I said, domestic, drunken, disorderly, intoxication, driving while intoxicated, all of that. So it really kind of just depended on your what you did, what crime you committed, as to where you were put in the level of the hierarchy.
Right, and where you went after that, whether you went home after you dried out or if you went to the federal prison after you
It,
went to court.
exactly. And what's interesting is our drunk tanks, we've got two of them. And so there were some instances where, you were pulled over for drunk driving and they would just put you in there. Instead of arresting you, they would just put you in there and let you sleep it off. But both of our drunk tanks were painted pink, known as drunk tank pink. And the inmates that we spoke to that spent any time in there said it really just made them nauseous rather than sobering them out.
That's hilarious. And drunk tank pink, I didn't even know that was a color. See, I'm learning
It,
so
it
much
is.
already.
It is a color. Yes, it's based
Wow.
on a study that was done in the 1960s, I believe, that said the color pink reduces aggression and violent tendencies. So, correctional facilities across the country started painting their drunk tanks or their solitary confinement cells pink.
That is amazing. And yeah, I never would have thought of that. But yeah, there are common colors. I don't know how I would feel inside of a pink room. That would be kind of, I don't know if that would make me go crazy or not. And I love that this jail was in service for so long, 104 years, if I did my math right. Is that
Yeah,
about right?
absolutely. And it housed both men and women, which was kind of interesting. So we did have a dedicated women's cell on the second floor, as well as the dedicated women's cell on the third floor.
Yeah. And what I read, there was a moment where it closed and then reopened. Is that right? There, and I can't remember what the story was behind there, but there's like a small gap.
Yeah,
So
there's a very small gap in the 70s where they decided, hey, let's just decommission this jail and open a new jail facility. And when they did that, almost immediately people started escaping. So after 4 or 5 escapes from that facility in the few years that it was open, they turned that into the juvenile detention center, and they brought all the inmates back here and recommissioned this as the jail. So we've never had an inmate escape from the building itself, and so that's why they said, it's pretty secure. Let's just bring them all back and say this is our jail.
and I love that you predicted my next question because I'm going to say, did anybody ever escape? So yeah, I mean, that says a lot about the building process from the early 1900s that it's that
Mhm.
secure. That's comforting and also terrifying, depending on how you look at that. Is there a person or a sheriff or somebody who's like most associated with that jail, who is like a storied guy, anything like that?
Well, there really are several sheriffs who have occupied the position here that were very well known, and depending on the administration, I mean, we've and again, we're in a very rural county in Tennessee, so there are a lot of families, a lot of longevity, if you will, from the family members in this community. So you have those sheriffs that would come in. They were very well known, very well known family names such as Laxton and Sexton and all of that, and Carson. And there's still family members of those families today that are still here. And then you have those sheriffs also elected or deputizing their children or their nephews or nieces or whatever. So you really have this interesting phenomena where you have law enforcement officials, and it's almost a family business, if you will. So people like the Laxtons, like the Carsons, they have the names in here. Now, as far as what you call infamous sheriffs, we did have Sheriff Richard Ellis. He was killed right outside the front door in 1925. He was killed by a moonshiner when he was bringing an inmate into the jail, and it's still an unsolved murder as to who killed Sheriff Ellis. But he's one of our well-known stories here. Like I said, you've got several sheriffs who are very well known here. So as you go down the line of sheriffs and when they were elected, there's a lot of those.
Oh, I'm sure. And with it being a jail, there's so many tragic stories connected to jails, either on the law enforcement side or on the inmate side, I'm sure, and the crime itself that led to that intersection there.
Mhm.
Which leads me to my first question about paranormal. You said that when we started talking that you had heard some stories before you stepped into this role of this building. So people have said it's been haunted for a long time. Was this after it closed, or did inmates like complain while they were there that strange things would happen?
It actually before it closed, and that's a great question because a lot of people associate hauntings with after a building has been closed. But while the deputies and sheriffs worked here, we did have reports of interesting phenomena that they couldn't explain. We had one jailer who was working here. He was up on the third floor, and he said that a shadow figure ran him off the third floor one night while he was making his rounds. We had a woman who was a deputy, and she got into the elevator one night by herself, and as she's going up to the third floor in the elevator, a man coughed in her ear, and she never rode the elevator after that. We've had several deputies come in, and it's kind of funny how they all start their stories. They say, I don't really believe in that stuff, but when I worked here, this happened. And so we had several independent deputies. They came in to tell us the same story, and that is that during the night, on some instances, there would be the sound of so many footsteps on the back stairs that they thought inmates were trying to escape, so they would call an emergency head count. But then to find out that everybody was in the cell that they needed to be in, and there was just phantom footsteps running up and down the stairs. And so those reports happened well before the jail closed. And then when the jail closed, as I said before, it sat vacant. And interestingly enough, Miranda Young, my business partner, she was one of the first people in here to investigate the jail after it closed in 2008. I believe it was 2014 when she came in here. So she and some friends were able to gain access and do some investigating. And she came away with some very unexplainable pieces of evidence. She heard a woman moaning and crying in our drunk tank. She heard some disembodied voices while she was here as well. So just that connection was another one of those other selling features for us, because we really had the mindset that this was a location that had some unexplained paranormal activity before we even started the business.
I know a lot of places like this. Not only is the paranormal connected to what the business or the building was used for, but the land it was on as well. Is there a connection there as well to tribal land or anything like that that you're aware of?
And that's a very interesting question as well. So one of the reasons we do think that there are a lot of that there's a lot of energy that is maintained within these walls is that the building itself is entirely made up of sandstone. So the bricks, each brick is 5 feet by 4 feet by 3 feet thick, and sandstone has quartz in it, and we believe that that's a great energy conductor. Also, less than 50 yards from here, there's a river and a waterfall, and water is a great conductor of energy as well, and also Native American influence. Obviously, there was a lot of Native American individuals in this area. Whether or not they were specifically on this land, I can't speak to that, but we know that they were in the area. So that could be some of the contributing factors also. But really, when we're talking about the building in terms of energy, we do attribute it to the sandstone as well as the water that's running right behind us.
That's fascinating, how that's connected. And I've heard a lot of people say that, that does conduct that energy and kind of fuel these places. Now, you talked about your business partner doing some investigation. Tell me a little bit about your investigations there. What are some of the things you've seen or experienced in that building?
Mm-hmm. And we do spend a lot of time here. So both Miranda and I are here, 16 hours a day sometimes, just from opening and running the day tours to running the nighttime tours and just being here at night. So probably one of the first things that I experienced when we first got here is we got the keys about 2 months before we actually opened because we wanted to have some time to clean up, really get our museum situated, and come in here and really do a deep clean of all the cells, all the floors, and all of that. And so we had all of our cleaning supplies on a table upstairs on that second level. And one day I was actually out of town, and Miranda called me, and she said, I was running the shop vac up in the kitchen, and I dislodged this razor blade and underneath this little lip of this dumbwaiter system that we had. And I said, well, obviously I want to see this razor blade. So I said, when I come back in the morning, I'll take a look at it. Just set it on that table that we have up on the second floor. And so she did. And when I came in the next morning, the razor blade was gone. I have yet to see the razor blade. It has completely disappeared. She and I were the only two people that had keys to the building. We have no idea where this razor blade is gone. So that was an interesting, phenomenon to witness. But I've seen everything. I've seen shadow figures here, heard doors slamming, whistling, people clearing their throats and or sighing is kind of a big thing. Like you'll be standing upstairs and just doing something or leading a tour, and you'll hear like behind you, or a sigh, like a standing next to you. So that happens quite frequently. And it really just kind of runs the gamut of paranormal phenomena here.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's incredibly active. Are these residual spirits, intelligent spirits? You think it's a mix of both, you think?
We think it's a mix of both, absolutely. So kind of some of the residual things that we witnessed, we hear footsteps a lot. And what we found is they're kind of correlating to a specific time. So those that have heard them are hearing them somewhere between about a quarter to midnight to about 10 minutes after midnight. Somewhere in that window is when most people are hearing those footsteps. And we think those are residual. But we've also had intelligent responses as well. We had one instance where we were upstairs on our second level, and we were just using some of the stories that we have upstairs as what we call trigger items. So we would read some of the stories and see if we got a response. And there was a woman in one of the stories named Rhonda Bird, and I just happened to say, I was reading the article and I said, did anybody here know Rhonda Bird? And we had a man yell out, I knew her. And Miranda and I were the only two people in the building, but yet we hear this man yelling down the foyer, I knew her. And we captured it on our audio recorder. So those are things we think are very intelligent, right? It's hearing our conversations and responding.
Right. And how do you react when something like that happens? Are you excited? Are you scared? Is it a mix of both? Because everybody has a different reaction to
Yeah,
paranormal.
for us, it's absolutely fascinating. And it just really leads credence to the fact that this building has a lot of stories yet to tell. Both Miranda and I, we've been investigating. I've been investigating for about 11 years. Miranda's been investigating for about 14 years. And we've been all over the country. Between the two of us, we've hit almost every major location in the country. And so we're really kind of used to this. And really, the way we approach our investigation styles is from a research minded perspective. And so for us, that is just adding data to what we're trying to do, what we're trying to figure out, what we're trying to find with regard to these haunted locations. And so just to have her as my business partner on this, and to know that we share that same historical passion as well as that paranormal passion. For us, it's when we hear those things or see those things, it's more of a rush than getting scared, honestly.
Yeah, and again, it's there's an excitement to it that's really hard to explain to some people who aren't into the paranormal or have never experienced it before. So I
Mm-hmm.
completely understand that, and I'm right there with you.
Mm-hmm.
You talked a lot about how there's a lot of evidence, there's a lot of things that we don't really know what it is yet that's unexplainable. So my next question for you is have you been able to identify any of the spirits that are there? Is a former inmate who you know who they were still lingering around, for example?
Some of the evidence that we've collected really leads us to believe that Sheriff Ellis, that the energy of Sheriff Ellis is still here. He was the sheriff that was killed right outside the front door in 1925. We've captured shadow figures that we attribute to him simply because he was so tall. He was about 6'7", and the shadow figures that we've captured and that we've seen are about that height. And so we kind of attribute that to him. Some of the evidence that some of the teams have captured when they're here lead us to believe that he is still here, as well as some of the other inmates that we know up on the third floor that either died of natural causes or committed suicide here. We do believe that some of those energies are still here as well.
Mm.
So just from what we've captured and what some of the other paranormal investigators that have come in, what they've captured, I think we do have a handle on some of the entities. But to your point, we've had such a long history here in this building. It's really hard to narrow down a lot of the responses that we get. So, for example, we had a medium come in and she just did a day tour. We didn't even know she was a medium, right? She just came in, bought a ticket, did a day tour, and about 30 minutes later, she comes back down. And that's when she says, I'm a medium. And did you ever find anything about a Matthew on the back stairs? We've never heard the name Matthew. It's just one of those names. And she said, Matthew. Unfortunately, we don't have records of a specific Matthew associated with the building. So that was interesting that she caught that voice, or she caught that feeling that somebody named Matthew was in the back stairwell. Well, coincidentally, we had a team come in that same night, and they did an investigation. And one of the girls came down and said, I just captured this EVP and it says Matthew. It was on the back stairs and says Matthew. Do you know of a Matthew here? And we're like, no, but coincidentally, we now have two people on the same day getting the name Matthew. So we have a lot of those questions when paranormal investigators come in because we are getting a lot of names. Some of the teams are getting the same names, which is interesting, but every now and then, like Matthew, they'll come up with a name that we haven't heard before, but yet we're getting validation from other investigators.
Right, it pieces itself together over time, which is
It does.
interesting. And then you mentioned, there's been some tragedies in that place, the suicides and what have you, the fire, for example.
Mhm.
I'm assuming those contribute directly to some of these hauntings as well, things like that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. So, my personal belief is places like jails and prisons, they're not seeing the best aspect of life, right? They're seeing tragedy, they're seeing essentially not so much evil, but the human existence that's not so great, right? And I believe that energy really permeates the walls and it kind of sticks with the walls. So while we did have some suicides in here, we did have incidences of lynchings where mobs would come in and grab inmates and take them out and hang them. So we do have several of those in our historical narrative as well. But I think just the overall daily life here, just because it wasn't so great, like many prisons and jails, I think that holds that energy as well that kind of permeates into those walls. Um, So to your point, we do have a lot of those where we can get specific stories and they're starting to build over time, but we do have those instances as well where it's just a name that comes through and we're still trying to find that information.
Right, and to your point, a jail is not a resort. I mean, it's
No.
not, you're not supposed to be comfortable. You're not supposed to have a good time. Speaking of these tours, I mean, you've been able to offer them for about 2 years or so now. I believe you said in 2021.
Mhm.
Anything stand out as far as tours go? I mean, you mentioned, the name Matthew. Has anybody come forward with an incident as something that surprised you or caught you off guard, or was just amazing evidence that stands out to you?
Well, we offer several different types of tours. First of all, so we have our general day tours where people can just come in, and sometimes, like that medium the other day, they don't announce themselves as mediums or anything like that. So they'll come back and report different things, like they've had a feeling on the third floor or the second floor, they heard something. So that's the day tours, and then we have after dark tours. We've got flashlight tours for the general public. We've got guided ghost hunts for those who have an interest in the paranormal but don't really have a team. And then we have paranormal investigators who come in. So paranormal investigators, those are more the established teams that have been doing this, that have a technique, that have a style, that are looking specifically for paranormal evidence. So we've actually had a lot of things happen on all of those different tours, right? I gave you an example of the first one. When we have these flashlight tours, it's very interesting because we will have people, just general public people, say they get a different feeling or they've heard something or they hear something. There have been nights where we'll hear a humming or a whistling on some of these tours, and that really kind of startles everybody on the tour. And then the paranormal investigators, we've had almost 100 teams here since we opened, and I can honestly say every team has left with some type of evidence, whether it be an EVP, whether it be a light anomaly that they can't explain, footsteps. I think one of the most startling ones, we did have a team here, RKB Paranormal, that had a picture come off the wall and it went about 4.5 feet. So that was pretty startling. Probably one of the better pieces of evidence that we've captured from here. But every team has felt or experienced something that they can't explain. And that to me is extremely compelling. And then when you have these teams that are getting similar names, right? And there are some instances where we don't tell the teams the names that we get or the names that we know of the spirits that are here, but yet they're coming up with the same names. There's also a phenomena that happens up on the second floor where people will be looking at a display case or one of our pictures and they'll see the reflection of a man behind them. Now, we never describe what the man looks like, but every time it's described to us, it's the same man. It looks the exact same on every description. And so that's the reason why we don't describe him, because we want people to describe him to us. And then we'll say, okay, yeah, you're matching what everybody else is seeing. So that's an interesting phenomena as well. So I think pretty much every tour has the potential to have something unexplained happen. And each one is fascinating, whether it just be footsteps or a picture coming off the wall. It all adds to the fact that something unexplainable is happening here.
Right, absolutely. And how large is this jail? When it was open, how many inmates could it hold, for example?
When it was originally open and it had 2 stories, the capacity was 34 inmates. When the third story was added, that capacity increased to 50 inmates. However, it was not uncommon to have over 100 inmates in here. Essentially, anywhere they can shut and lock a door, they would just put a mat on the floor, and that's where the inmates would sleep.
And the reason I asked that is, there's so many souls that went in and out of that building. It would
Mm-hmm.
be hard to do the math of
Mm-hmm.
what that would be over 104 years with that kind of formula. I mean, there's
Yeah,
really no way to know.
exactly. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and records are so hard to come by, especially when there's a fire or something like that. How complete are the records of the jail? Are they decent? Are they, I guess, what is the record there?
And no, it's really not. So the historical society of the community, they actually maintain those records, and so we've been able to go in and look at them. And it really depends on the sheriff at the time. So some of the sheriffs, I mean, very meticulous. Date, time, inmate number, blah blah. The whole gamut of the record is there. But then you have some sheriffs where it's like, you know. Eddie, 9 o'clock Monday. And then when he was checked out, just a check mark, and something like that. So it really depended on the sheriff and how meticulously they kept or maintained those records. So it really just depends. So for some sections of time, we have very meticulous records, others we don't.
Yeah, and I think that's everywhere you go. Record keeping is, such a personal thing that people do or don't do. It's always hard to tell.
Mhm.
You said you talked to some of the former deputies, some of the former inmates that were there. Have any of those folks come back to visit the jail? And if so, what were their responses like? Were they freaked out just to be back in that location?
Well, we've had some of those. I mean, we've had a lot of inmates that come back, and a lot of jailers and deputies as well. I think the overwhelming response is, wow, you've done a great job with this place. Because I think most people, when they come in, they just expect to go through the jail and that's it. But we have a very detailed museum through here, a lot of articles, a lot of artifacts, a lot of displays that people aren't really expecting to see. And we also have an audio tour, so you can take an audio tour through here as well. And it's something that we're very, very proud of. Both Miranda and I have worked very hard to make sure that we have a museum that, one, highlights the history of the building, and then two, the paranormal is actually secondary. So for those deputies and inmates that have come back, I think they've really enjoyed it, and they've actually allowed us to add to the narrative. Right? We had one former inmate who came in and God bless him, he spent a lot of time here for Drunk and Disorderly. So he is not ashamed to share his testimony about how he spent his time in here. And one of his specialties while he was here is he would make toilet hooch or prison hooch, alcohol in jail.
Wow.
And so he brought us some, and we have it upstairs on display. And he's real proud of that, and we're real proud of that. And so we have those that have really helped us to make the stories come to life here. And they've encouraged us and have donated items to us. So to have that type of assistance in what we're doing, for me, it's just a fantastic feeling to know that we've got that community support behind us. So to your point, when we have those people come in, yes, we've had deputies, we've had judges come in, we've had former inmates come in, and so far they seem to have enjoyed it.
And I love that the community has embraced this building, embraced your project, and supports it so well.
Mhm.
So speaking of supporting the project and supporting the jail, tell me how people can get involved, how they can take the tour, how they can find you, podcast, all that good stuff.
Mhm.
People track you down.
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is www.historicscottcojail.com. And as I said before, my business partner, Miranda Young, she is extremely good at graphic design and marketing and management and all of that. So I really think our website is top notch. In fact, we actually just won an award for our website from the Tennessee Association of Museums. So anything you want to know about us is on that website. How you can book a flashlight tour, how you can book a paranormal investigation, all of our events. We have an escape room upstairs as well. So if you want to come and do the escape room, you can try that. All of that information is on our website, and we update it routinely. We're also very active on Facebook under historicscottcountyjail.com. So anything you want to know about us, any of our upcoming events is also there as well. And then Miranda and I both host a podcast on Sunday nights called the Jailhouse Informant. And we just talk to a variety of individuals. Right now, we're doing a series on historic jails. So we're talking to other jail owners or managers across the country. But we pepper it in with other guests. We just had a forensic anthropologist on the other day. We've had different authors and stuff on as well. A pathologist, I'm sorry, forensic pathologist, and very different things there.
Very different thing.
Yeah, so we just had him on the other day, and so it's a really cool podcast. We really enjoy doing it. We do host it from the jail, so it's called the Jailhouse Informant, and that's every Sunday night. But again, if you want any information on us, it's our website, www.historicscottcojail.com.
And to back that up, I've been on your website, obviously, to contact you and to do the little bit of research that I did. It's fantastic. It's so easy to navigate. And of course, on the YouTube version of this, we'll have the link to where everybody can get there and follow you and tease you on Facebook and all that good stuff as well. Before I let you go, is there anything that we didn't touch on, either about the building itself or any stories that maybe we should throw in here, or do you think we have it pretty well covered? I mean, it's 100+ years of history to cover, and 40
Mhm.
minutes. Hard to
Yeah.
do.
No, like I said, if you go to our website, really some of the information is there, but we really do encourage people to just to come and visit and see for yourself. A lot of people will see pictures of the jail and say, it looks like a castle, but it's so small. I don't, there really can't be anything in there. But we do have a great museum, and I couldn't have asked for a better business partner in Miranda. We've really come together to form a really cool partnership with this, and we're really proud of the fact that we have this great jail with this amazing history that we can highlight, as well as allow paranormal investigators to come in and really research the paranormal. So for me, this has just been an amazing ride with my best friend, and it's something that we're really, really proud of.
That's awesome. Congratulations. I mean, it's a dream job for you. It sounds like would be a dream job for me too. So I'm a little envious. Not that I want to say I'm going to hang out in a jail all the time, but I would definitely come visit. I can't thank you enough, Kristy, for spending your afternoon with me and sharing your stories. I can't wait to put this piece together. I'm going to do some more research, some more deep dive on the jail because there's so much history there, and you gave me some great names to start on as well. So thank you so much, and everybody, make sure if you are in that area of Tennessee, get yourself a tour, check out this amazing location. And if you discover something weird, let us know because we want to know and report back in our various podcasts.
Thank you, Steve.
No problem. Thank you, Kristy. You enjoy the rest of your day.
You as well.
Hey, thanks so much for watching that. Remember, go to phantomhistory.com and sign up on the newsletter so you are alerted when we have a new podcast. And check out our new bed and breakfast at phantomhistoryhouse.com where you can book your stay and we can talk ghost stories in person in the library. See you then.